So we come again now to another important stop in the Abbott and Costello nostalgia train for me. As I mentioned with Whodunit, these films came along at a very particular point in my development, and as such, certain among them have particular importance to me from a nostalgia point of view. I've talked about, In the Navy, very important to me because my friends and I did some of the routines from those for talent shows. Whodunit was one of the first ones I bought on VHS, and one of the second ones, and I don't remember which one I bought first, was Hit the Ice. So this is one of the first Abbott and Costello movies I've ever watched. I don't know which one I bought first, this one or Whodunit, but I know that Hit the Ice would have grabbed me right away. I'm from Alaska, so ice, snow, watching Abbott and Costello in a winter environment spoke to me because it felt like they were making fun or they were participating in things that I was familiar with. So I bought that one fairly quick up. So again, I almost want to say this is maybe the first one I saw. I just have this feeling like it was. There are certain scenes from this one that are very, very engraved in my mind. So I think that this may have been the first one I purchased and the first one I actually watched on my own. So this one has real nostalgia value to me. So as I mentioned with Whodunit, when that happens, and you're looking at it now from a critical eye, you're looking at it years later, how does it hold up? And the answer to that is pretty well, not as well as Whodunit, but fairly well. It's still a really fun film, but there are some issues with it. Some of them were just kind of pacing and script issues, and others, we'll talk about that towards the end. But I do still love Hit the Ice. This is one of those things, when I think of an Abbott and Costello movie, this is one of the first ones that pops into my head. So let's talk about it. So what is this one about? Refreshingly, we have a fairly straightforward plot this time, fairly. So a gangster is pretending to be sick so he can be held up at a hospital, which is right across the street from a bank. That's to provide him cover for when he and his boys go over to rob the bank. They can slip back in and, they have a perfect alibi. They mistake Abbott and Costello, who are two kind of street photographers, as hired muscle from Detroit. So they go rob the bank. Abbott and Costello get blamed for the robbery and have to follow the criminal all the way up to this ski lodge called Sun Valley to try to track him down, find the money, return it to clear their names. There you go. There's the plot. Fairly straightforward, thankfully. There are, of course, plot cul-de-sacs and whatnot. But for the most part, it's a pretty straightforward narrative. And I think because it's a much more straightforward narrative, it flows a lot easier than some of the other ones. Some of the ones with the more convoluted stories, upon rewatch, they make it a little harder to kind of get into the film. This one, it's very simple. The plot is right there. We're not having any issues. One thing you're going to notice is that this one is a lot more reliant on slapstick than I think some of their previous films. There's a lot more slapstick going on in this one because, of course, you get Lou Costello in a situation where he's on ice, where he's on skis, where he's on skates. Slapstick is kind of the best way to go, or it seems like the natural way to go, which is good. Lou is a very talented physical comedian, and I also think, I haven't mentioned this in previous reviews, but I think I should mention it now, because I think a lot of credit has to go to Lou's stunt double. Lou's stunt double for the majority of his films was his brother, Pat Costello. And Pat Costello will actually have a speaking role in one of their films later on, but for the most part, he does a lot of Lou's stunt work and does it very well. You can't help but hide the fact when you do the long shots that it is two different people, but he has Lou's physicality down, so it's not too much of a stretch. But that does kind of pull out of it, especially when looking at it from a modern lens, how easy it is to identify the stunt double to the real person. You know, they do a little bit better job with that these days, because a lot of times it's computers. But back in the day, they just had to rely on editing, and the editing is very fast in those instances, so it hides it fairly well, but you can't quite escape the knowledge that that's not the same person. And I think that's part of where the disconnect comes upon rewatch. Also, and I gotta say, I love the slapstick of Abbott and Costello, but I was a figure skater, folks, and I've fallen on the ice so many times. Watching someone else do it, especially with kind of the zeal that a comedian would have to do to get the laugh, it hurts. It hurts to look at. It really does. I'm just like, oh man. I mentioned this with like In the Navy and Hold That Ghost, some of the big slapstick moments in those pictures, and how they're very funny and very well done, but I can't help but look at them going, oh my God, that has no give, and he just splat. I also think they work a lot of Bud and Lou's routines into this one a lot easier. One of the routines which I love is the pack the grip. This is where they figure they got to run away from wherever they are, and Bud tells Lou, pack the grip. And Bud goes off on this thing, we're going to do this, and we're going to run away, and fight, but wait, why should we run away? Why should we run? We're not guilty. Unpack the grip. Unpack the grip! And, Lou has to go back and forth, packing and unpacking, and he's getting more. He starts out, folding the laundry nice and neat, and then by the end, he's just throwing stuff in there willy-nilly. It's a funny routine for two reasons. One, of course, Lou Costello just reacting is always hysterical. But two, you got to give a lot of credit, and people always credit Bud Abbott for being the best straight man in the business. But there's a lot more to him than just setting up the joke. There is a lot of talent in what he does. And the pack the grip bit is a situation where you can tell that he's doing a lot of ad-libbing. He's just making these lines up, either using ones that they've used in vaudeville before, or just using the situation. So watching that scene, that he's just making this up. These aren't the written lines. He's just, killing time until Lou gets enough in the suitcase before he switches gears. So this is not only a tour de force for Lou in his comical reactions, it's a tour de force of why Bud Abbott was such a good straight man. Keeping the scene going, keeping it energetic, making stuff up, giving Lou just enough time before he switches gears, and shortening up the time in between gear shifts to make it harder for him to unpack and repack. That is, in wrestling, they would call that a ring general. And Bud Abbott is a comedic general. He sees the battlefield, he plans it out, and he hits it. And it's a masterclass. The other routine they do is one of their standards. They do this in a couple of pictures and TV show. It's like the piano bit or all right. This is any situation where Lou tries to convince somebody they can play the piano. Bud is behind the piano with a Victrola, playing some piano music, and Lou's there, kind of doing this. And when Lou says all right, he'll stop the music. When he says all right, he'll start it. Bud falls asleep, and the music's playing, and Lou's just, it's well done here, but I'm going to say this is probably one of my least favorite Abbott and Costello routines. I don't know. It's just, I'm sure it worked very well in old vaudeville. And the first time I watched this movie, I still think it's funny. And I watched it this time going, okay, this is pretty good. But it is one of the routines they pull out a lot. And it's one of those routines that goes on just a little too long for my taste. In every incarnation of it. It's just a little too long. So it's good, it's funny, but I don't know, I like some of their other routines better. This one's not as good upon retrospect. So the rest of the cast, there's an interesting crew here. So their leading lady this time, young lady by the name of Jenny Sims. Part of the reason I think I remember this film and why I remember it so fondly is Jenny Sims, because I think she was the first Luke Costello love interest I remember, and she was a lovely lady, I gotta say, and a very different physical presence than a lot of the previous leading ladies or women in Abbott and Costello. Most of the other supporting characters, most of the other boy-girl love interests, most of them are petite blondes. You had a brunette in there every so often, but most of them were petite blondes. Jenny Sims was taller, at least she looked taller. She was a little fuller figured, her face a little rounder, dark eyes, dark hair, just a lovely presence. So I dare say, as a going into my early teenage years, she was a crush. I had a crush on her. I don't think she's as strong as some of the other leading ladies Bud and Lou have had, especially ones that have had to share the scene with Lou or had to dictate the scene with Lou. She doesn't quite have the energy to do it. She's very good as kind of the femme fatale and letting him kind of react off her beauty, but she's a little flat in terms of being able to respond off of him. Just a little, but she's still a good presence, and again, I think she's taller than a lot of their leading ladies have been. Of course, a lot of people are taller than Lou, but the fact he has to kind of reach up for her so much to kiss her is a very funny thing. So I think she works well. I don't think she's as strong as some of the ones we've seen or some of the ones we will see. Another great addition to this one, and this is a guy who's going to come back for, I think, at least one more Abbott and Costello movie, if not two. The great Sheldon Leonard. This guy, I love Sheldon Leonard. Sheldon Leonard is an amazing Hollywood talent. Best known for playing tough guys and gangsters and heavies. Most film audiences know him best as Nick the bartender from It's a Wonderful Life. The out you pixies go, through the barn or through the hayloft. That's a Mystery Science Theater quote. I mixed it up. Out you pixies go, through the door, through the window. There you go. Now I got it right. I did the Mystery Science Theater quote first. Boy, what a great villain. What a great heavy. What a great gangster presence. A great film gangster presence. And he plays that role a lot. He got fed up with playing that role, and towards the end of his career, shifted into producing, and he's credited with producing some very influential television shows. So he's just a really good actor. He's just really good, and like I say, his presence works. He has a great villain presence. When he's in the room, you feel threatened, and he can adjust that level of threat depending on who he's in the ring with. If he's in there with Lou, you got to be intimidating, but you also got to be able to take the comic pratfalls and hits so that Lou can come out on top. But if he's in there with a tougher guy, he can ratchet that up so he's way more intimidating. It's a talent. So it's always good to see Sheldon Leonard. I'm a big Sheldon Leonard mark. Our boy-girl combination here, okay, but fairly bland again. Do nothing. They're there more for the plot, because our boy-girl combination this time is the doctor who is treating the gangster and his nurse who is suspicious that the gangster is faking. So this time played by Elsie Knox as the nurse, as Peggy the nurse, and Patrick Knowles as the doctor. You may remember Patrick Knowles from Who Done It. He was the misogynist radio playwright in that one. Well, he's playing a different character here. He's now the misogynist doctor. I know that the man must have been lovely in real life. I'm sure he was. And again, this was an attitude that was commonplace back in the day. But, man, he is a dickweed. He just plays these dickweeds in these Abbott and Costello movies. And he's supposed to be the romantic lead. You know, one of his first interactions, you know, he and Peggy are in the first scene of the movie, and she comes out and goes, "Doctor, I think he's faking." And he's like, "Well, I suppose your proof is based on something other than women's intuition." It's like, you fucking cock. You know, it's okay to doubt her, but you don't have to be that much of a shit about it. You know? So yeah, he is, I don't know, I don't know like what he was like in real life, but I haven't seen a lot. He has a pretty extensive career. He was a big character actor. He's in a lot of stuff. But I don't know if he played misogynist in everything he was in, but it sure seemed like he did it a lot for Bud and Lou. So they're okay. Again, they're there for plot points to get, you know, to get the gangster from one point to the next. It works fairly well, I'd say. If I have to be honest, so again, why doesn't this film kind of hold up as well? It still holds up. It's still funny. I still love it, but it's not as strong as, say, Whodunit. And I think there are a couple of reasons for that. And one, we've talked about like the over-reliance on the slapstick, which requires more editing for some of the bigger things. So that's one. Number two, I think it's the musical numbers. The musical numbers do not help. Again, I mentioned this way back when we started this with, you know, Buck Privates and the inclusion of the Andrews Sisters. The Andrews Sisters kind of set the tone for great Abbott and Costello movie music, that boogie-woogie, upbeat, up-tempo kind of thing. The music in this, especially the two musical numbers that are like back-to-back in this, are much slower. They're a little bit more methodical. They're still upbeat, but they're very kind of, I'm like a film by Disney, minus the mouse. Da 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 da, da 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 da. You know, and both these songs back to back are like that, and they drag the film down. They drag the pacing down. You need, in those middle bits, you need an upbeat tune. You need something peppy to keep the energy of an Abbott and Costello film going. If you don't have that, then it just slows the pace. You know, and again, these are two numbers placed like right back to back with each other, and they really just, it's agony to get back to. They have there's four numbers in this one. The third one, while they're ice skating, is pretty catchy. It's little kind of yodeling ditty about a dance in Switzerland where you slap people. It's pretty catchy. And then they do another one. They do a last one at the very end of the film when everybody is, you know, riding to go see, you know, to ride to the end of the film, which is just bad placement. Especially for a musical number that Abbott and Costello are not involved in. The plot is done. We're just wrapping up with the last jokes. Why are we taking 3 minutes for this musical number that feature neither one of our main characters? You know, you have the bland boy-girl in it, and it's like, just end the movie. I also got to say 2 things before I kind of get to the end here. I love Gina Sims in this, but her character is kind of a dick. With these comedies, you have to excuse an awful lot. There's a lot of willing suspension of disbelief because of, you know, the situation. But there are, you know, for instance, with the Abbott and Costello movies, you have to understand the fact that Lou is going to misunderstand basic concepts. You know, go ahead and back up, kind of thing. You got to understand that. But so throughout this whole movie, Lou has had a crush on this girl, and he is chasing after her, but she's in love with the band leader. So at the end of the film, after the big chase scene, she says to her band leader boyfriend, "Should I tell Tubby about us?" And he's like, "Yeah." And she goes, "Tubby, you know, I want you to be the first to know that we're going to get married." She uses the term, "we're going to get married." She doesn't gesture to the guy, to her boyfriend. She just says, we are going to get married. To which Lou thinks that she's going to marry him. And he's like, you know, I'm going to be a June bride. And he's saying this in front of her. And at no time does she say, no, no, no. we are not getting married. She lets him go on with this. Like, I would have excused it if she had come up, said it, and then she and her boyfriend walked away, and she didn't hear any of Lou's, you know, I'm going to be a bride kind of thing. Because then there's no way she could miss, you know, but she's standing right there. How do you not hear him say this and realize you've led him on? You know, come on. But there's another great scene. There's a wonderful scene, and this happens a lot in Abbott and Costello movies. And I love when this happens. Kind of going along the same thing with Bud's ad-libbing. There's another great fourth wall break in this. So after the piano bit, where she finds out he doesn't actually play the piano, Gina Sims backs Lou Costello up towards this giant swimming pool, saying, "Oh, I thought you were a nice little man, and I tried to be nice to you," and blah, blah, blah. And she walks away. Lou turns to the camera and says, "You thought I was going to fall in, didn't you?" At which point, another beautiful girl in a bathing suit gets up, walks past him, and he does this, woo, and spins around and falls in the pool. Not only is it a great gag, but what I love is that you can see all of the extras lining the pool are watching him intently, and they've got these smiles on their faces. They know what's coming. And as he's hitting the pool, you just hear them all laugh. I love when things like that happen and when they are caught on film, because you feel like you've caught a real moment. You know, a real live moment. There's one in a great Christmas film, Christmas in Connecticut, when they're at a dance, and one of the guys dancing with Barbara Stanwyck does this really funny jump, and she just breaks up laughing. And you can tell that's her doing, that's Barbara Stanwyck, that's not the character. And I love that moment, and I love that moment in this movie where all these extras are watching him and just waiting, and they just burst out laughing. You find that happens a lot in Abbott and Costello movies. I mentioned that there was another reason I feel this film isn't as strong as I remember. And again, it's still good. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. There is definite signs of fatigue setting in. And that is from the actors. You can tell watching this one that there are certain points where Lou Costello is just not at his best, where he's pushing forward because he has to. He's got to get it done, and he's going to do the best job he can. But there's a slight loss in the bounce in his step, just slightly. And you can attribute this to, you know, this is, you know, they've been making these movies time and time again, so you can kind of say that, but there's actually a deeper reason for it. So this film wraps, and they start saying, well, what's the next thing we're going to do? And they were actually planning a Broadway show, but instead they go out on another 2-month tour. They go to raise more money. And so if you've been keeping up with these reviews and you're looking at the dates on them, you'll notice it's movie, tour, movie, tour. It's just a non-stop push for almost 3 years. From 1941 to now, this film was filmed in early 1943 and would be released in July 1943. But it takes a toll. And it finally took a toll on Lou Costello. And on his 37th birthday, I'll have to check the fact on that for the next video, he collapsed. And he collapsed with rheumatic fever. This is the disease of the heart. The pace had just caught up with him, and he couldn't do it anymore. And when that happened, we bring a very clear end to the first phase of Abbott and Costello's film career. It's sad that it's marked this way, but these are the early films. These ones we've been talking about, these are the early films. I've mentioned that, and I've classified them as such many times. What we're going to move into here in a little bit are the middle period of their career, you know, and we're going to see that the The storylines are going to change. The formula's going to change up a bit. The types of movies they do are going to change, and the energy is going to change because of a lot of reasons. So with Hit the Ice, we bring a close to the first chapter of Abbott and Costello's film career. And unfortunately, it has to be marred with a lot of negativity. And before we continue on with the next phase of their film career, where we start talking about their middle pictures, we're going to have to take a little history lesson first. So the next video, we're going to talk about what is commonly referred to as the lost year. This is the year when Lou was not able to work. His doctors would not allow him to work. We're going to take a look at the lost year, what happened at the culmination of that lost year, and how it would forever change Lou Costello. So that is next time. So until then, thank you very much for joining me, and as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.